Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister was in Kiev today for talks with Ukraine's political leaders on fighting corruption and the threat from Russia. Chrystia Freeland's visit came one day after Andriy Shevchenko promised more support for Ukraine from a conservative government if he's elected, and 2 weeks after a political novice and TV personality won the country's presidential election. To talk about these latest developments, I'm joined by Andriy Shevchenko, Ukraine's ambassador to Canada. Mr. Ambassador, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me here.
Thanks for coming in to speak with me. Ms. Freeland met with a number of people today. It was kind of a whirlwind visit. She's the first G7 foreign affairs minister to visit Ukraine since the elections. She met with the current president, Petro Poroshenko, and the president-elect, Volodymyr Zelensky. What was the message your leaders wanted Minister Freeland to take away today?
Well, first, I think it was a very right decision to come to Ukraine. She understands that Ukraine is the country to watch, and probably it's the country to be in right now. And that's exactly what you expect of a friend. You expect your friend to come to see you when you need him or her, and when your friend feels that he or she can make a difference.
Okay, there's been a lot of focus outside Ukraine on your incoming president. He's a TV personality, a comedian, someone without political experience. So what does his election mean for Ukraine, and what does his election mean for Ukraine-Canada relations?
Well, first of all, and maybe most important for our country, that it was a huge exercise of democracy.
Right. Always important.
And in our case, we're witnessing a very peaceful and graceful transition from one president to another. And it's something which is not for granted in our part of the world. When it comes to the big challenges for the new president, it's going to be the same challenges. It's the war with Russia, and it's a very complicated modernization of the country.
Okay, Mr. Zelensky ran and won without a real detailed policy platform. What's his plan for dealing with Russia?
Well, I think his message is very clear that no compromise on our territorial integrity and no compromise on our citizens. So I think that we'll see continuation of very strong line against Russia, and actually it's something that we have very solid and unified position with our Western friends and with Canada. And I'm pretty sure this was one of the key issues that today was discussed in Kyiv between Minister Freeland and the team of the new president.
Yeah, she saw him. I think she talked a little bit about him. She saw him a little bit like Justin Trudeau, and the way he came, nobody expected him to win, really. And so this is an interesting, as you point out, exercise in democracy. It's been 6 months since Russia seized 3 Ukrainian warships, and the tension has again escalated with your country. And now Russia's been issuing passports to people living in the Donbass region of eastern Ukraine. What's at stake with all of this, and what more could Canada be doing?
Well, first of all, things are not getting better. Actually, we see more and more hostile action on behalf of the Russian Federation. With the passports, it's quite an astonishing development of the situation when Russia has decided to start issuing passports in the Ukrainian territory. Also, there was this recent decision of Russia to stop imports of oil and gas products, of exports of oil and gas products to Ukraine. I think all of those are very important signals, and that's quite a usual tactic of Putin when he is preparing for important negotiations. He will try to make your life as difficult as possible. So I think we are witnessing again this very familiar pattern of behavior. He knows he will have to deal with the new president-elect in Ukraine, and that's probably the way he prepares for that.
What are your expectations of how he's likely to deal with them? Is anything likely to change?
I think there is an appetite for some new options of the negotiation format, and I think we would like to see more consolidated international participation in the negotiations, but we are still to see what's going to happen.
The Trudeau government has extended Canada's military training mission in Ukraine through 2022, and yesterday Andriy Shevchenko, the leader of the official opposition, named Russia as a major threat to national security and promised a Conservative government would increase military support for Ukraine and offer Canadian leadership in a United Nations missions to secure Ukraine's borders. Is there additional military support your government wants from this country?
Yes, and there are several avenues of cooperation, and we were pleased to hear those messages from the leader of the opposition. But overall, Peter, I should say that we enjoy very strong cross-party consensus here in Canada on the Ukrainian file.
Right.
And there are very practical reasons for that. I think Canada feels that Ukraine is really one of the places on the planet where it really makes a huge difference. Even as we speak, Canadian officers and military trainers, they train our soldiers and officers. You're helping us to establish our new national police. We have just launched free trade agreement. So that's where actually, when we talk about Canada punching above its weight, that's definitely one of the cases. And it's not just about those things. We also expect Canadian companies to follow this with contracts and with investments. And we are pretty sure it's going to make life more interesting and vibrant for Canadian and Ukrainian citizens. So again, this strong multi-party consensus in Canada on Ukraine is because of this.
Okay. We've seen the Russian government and supporters, they're being accused of using traditional and social media to target Ukrainian Canadians with propaganda, trying to wedge the relationship here in Canada. How widespread is that, and what are you doing about it? What can you do about it?
It's not unique in the case of Canada. We actually can see a lot of this all over the planet, specifically in many European countries and in the US across the border. What can we do about this? I think we really have to cooperate on this. And that's why I'm very happy that there was a very impressive, strong observation mission sponsored by Canada in Ukraine. There were short-term observers, but also there were 50 long-term observers who stayed throughout the whole campaign in Ukraine. And now when these people come back to Canada, we hope they will be able to use their knowledge and their experience learned in Ukraine for Canada. Because I think there is a huge obvious risk that Russia might interfere into the Canadian election this fall.
Yeah, that's a lot of people are worried about that. Canada's hosting, we'll finish on this, Canada's hosting the next Ukraine Reform Conference that's coming up in July in Toronto. What should we expect to emerge from those talks?
First, it's the chance to set an agenda for Ukraine in the new political cycle. We have just elected a new president and we'll have a new parliament by the end of this year. So it's another 5-year cycle. So in Toronto on July the 2nd, we'll see about 30 nations coming together and actually discussing how we can move forward with reforms, with major changes, modernization inside of Ukraine. And second, I think it's a club of like-minded countries with strong position on democracy and on some other global issues.
What's the biggest challenge facing, in terms of reform, facing Ukraine?
The biggest challenge is how you can, at the same time, do two things. Defend your territory from a war, from an existing war. Every day we keep losing people. And second, modernize your country. So that's the challenge. And all the textbooks tell us that you cannot do 2 or 3 priorities at one time. We have no choice but to do it. And with the help of our friends and with support of such partners and allies as Canada, I think we can manage that.
All right, Ambassador Andriy Shevchenko, always good to talk to you. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you, Peter.